good evening and welcome to another edition of our Government at Work program. A program brought to you by the CCM-led Nevis Island Administration and hosted by yours truly. It's another glorious Thursday evening here on the island of Nevis, and it's the time when we look forward to bringing you the information as it pertains to the continued developments taking place here on the island of Nevis. There are positive signs of growth taking place in all areas of the Nevis economy, and each week we focus on at least one of those areas to ensure that you're all kept abreast of all the developments. This program is broadcast live on VON Radio every Thursday evening from 8 to 9:30 p.m. Then we broadcast on Nevis Television on Sunday evenings from 8:30 p.m. If you are unable to listen to our live broadcast at any time, this program can be seen on YouTube shortly thereafter. On a footnote, those of you who watch NTV on Digicel Cable TV, we are currently experiencing some technical difficulties from the Digicel end for the past few weeks. So I want to take this opportunity to apologize to you for the breaking transmission at this time, and to say to you that we are well aware of the situation and that it is being investigated and sorted by the Digicel company. However, all of our other outlets from which we broadcast are still very much up and running. We shall take a short break, and when I return I shall introduce my guest for this evening's program to you. So stay locked on to the powerhouse of the Eastern Caribbean, VON Radio 860 AM.
So right, St. Thomas is right, St. James is put together and build your land. Right, St. George's and St. Paul's together with St. John's. This land is enough for all to share. No reason to leave and go nowhere. Foreigners can come here from America and England. There is something mighty sweet about my land. And if the foreigners who live here can insist that it's here they're from, then I swear I'll never leave my native land. One people, one country.
Welcome back. Folks, the new school year is set to begin on Monday, September 2nd, just over 4 days from now. So I am pleased to have as my guest this evening, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education, my good friend, Ms. Zahnela Claxton. Zahnela, good evening and welcome once again to our Government at Work program.
Good evening, Mr. Scarborough. It's always a pleasure.
It's always a pleasure having you as well. Now, Zahnela, while the parents and the children are preparing for the start of the new school year, the teachers themselves are already at school preparing for their arrival. However, on Monday this week, the teachers attended the annual Teachers' Convocation at NIPAC, where they were addressed by the Minister of Education, the Honorable Troy Liburd. Enlighten us as to the purpose of this particular session.
All right, so the kickoff session, as we may call it, the convocation, takes place annually. It is the way in which we welcome the teachers back to school for the new academic year, and of course those who are taking their first round, then we welcome them for the first time. We generally see an address by the principal education officer as the one directly responsible for the schools. As you correctly said, we also had an address by Minister Liburd, and Minister Liburd touched on some very important matters, including the escalating crime and violence and the loss of one of our students recently to crime and violence. And then we had our feature address by Permanent Secretary Wakely Daniel. The convocation was held under the theme United Under One Umbrella, Educating for a Sustainable Future. And it talks about all of us working collectively towards the goal of preparing our students for whatever their futures may hold. We also had the introduction of our principals and deputy principals for the new year, and the welcome messages from them as well, and then some giveaways for the teachers. We always like to kind of add a little bit of energy to the space, so we gave away gas cards and gift cards for stationery items and that type of thing. So that was an activity which took place during the morning, Monday morning, and it ended at just about 11:30, 11:45. The teachers then went, they had a meeting or interaction with their principal, whether it be at the school itself or some of them had their meetings right there on site.
Okay, it sounds rather interesting and exciting, you know. Now, coming up on Tuesday next week, the sixth form will have their orientation, and that is scheduled to take place, like I say, on Tuesday. Shed some light on that for us, exactly what is to transpire there.
Okay, so we have the third annual orientation and advising day for the incoming sixth formers, both the 6A, which is the first year students, 6B, sorry, the first year students, and the 6A, which is the second year students. In order to move on to 6A, students have to pass a minimum of 2 of the CAPE exam subjects, and so they had to go through that process and vetting, and then the school decided who would progress to the 6A. 6B, we are, of course, we accepted those who met the minimum requirement, and in some instances we know that all of the grades have not returned yet, and we're still awaiting an update on that as to why some of the grades came back ungraded. But in those instances, we allowed them in on good faith. They wrote the subjects and they were able to present their transcripts from high school. Then we were able to kind of estimate that they may have the minimum requirement, and just so that everyone has an idea of what is to be expected. All incoming students must attend. It will take place at the Malcolm Gishard Recreational Park. They will get some updates from the staff at the Charleston Secondary School and Nevis Sixth Form. They would also get some insights, and they always have a feature address, so they'll have a feature speaker, some motivational speaker. They'll hear from the minister, giving them greetings and welcome, and then they'll hear a bit about some of the scholarships which are available. We know that the Ross University Scholarship is one of them that is available for our students at Sixth Form, and there's also a scholarship that was introduced last year in honor of John A. Howell.
Okay.
And that will the advising session starts at 8:30 a.m. and so we encourage all of the students who have enrolled. I think we have to date some 129 students who should be enrolled in between 6A and 6B so far.
What time on Tuesday does that start?
It starts at 8:30 and it should take up just about the whole morning, so should close off around noon.
Okay, great. Now, Ms. Claxton, like I said, we are just a few days away from the start of the new school year, which is normally an exciting time for all of the students, especially those that are moving up from the primary to the secondary school level. An exciting time for the parents and teachers as well, albeit for various reasons, which we shall get into a little later. I want to start this evening's discussion by asking you to tell us a little about some of the renovation works that is being done at some of the schools at this time, starting with the St. James Primary School. And I start with that school because I know some major repairs are taking place there. Enlighten us as to the type of repairs that is being done at this time.
All right, so the St. James Primary School had some issues. Some of the issues were reported by school leadership. We have also been in contact with the school's PTA, and who've also been having conversations with us along the way. There have been issues related to some issues with the roof. If you would recall, last year we removed one section of the roof, the entire infant section. This year we've removed the hallway and some other sections of the roof as well. During the Easter, if persons would recall, we also had some renovations. We outfitted the students' restrooms and the teacher restroom. We tried to get those in a better state. There were some issues there, plumbing issues and some other issues, and so those items were replaced. And then we did some painting there as well. During this year as well, there have been significant works throughout the year. So this last portion here that we can obviously see as you drive past, and the roof is off, has been off for the last 2 weeks or so from the hall. These were in addition to everything else that has been done so far to date during the school year. So even the end of last year into the second term this year, we renovated and outfitted the entire kitchen, and so throughout the school we've been trying to do upgrades based on some of the challenges and the issues being faced. So it is a major work, and we are working assiduously to ensure that the students can return to school on Monday. Whether or not every space will be complete, we feel like it's important to do it properly, but we will have enough spaces, and we've had conversations with leadership as well to ensure that we have enough spaces for every student to be accommodated during the return to school on Monday. I know that it is never the preferred situation. It's never the preferred situation to meet construction on the first day of school, and of course there's no justification or but humblest apologies to persons who may be inconvenienced by it, but we know that we also want the work done, and we want it done well.
True. Are there any renovations taking place in any other schools?
Yes, so we try to do some minor work at most schools, and it's interesting because everyone, schools are heavy use institutions. The students use them throughout the school year, and we know that we will have some level of destruction and damage happening over time because of the nature of what schools are and what has to be done, what has to take place there. But we got some minor works done at some of the schools, but in terms of major work, Charleston Preschool, they also had some challenges with their roof, and their roof was also removed. Their office, the supervisor's office, expanded. The kitchen, which was really small, was also expanded to add pantry, storage area, a prep station area, because there wasn't enough space for all of that to take place previously. So while taking care of the roof, we made the decision to also expand. Also the restrooms at Charleston Pre. Charleston Pre was built and opened in 1983, September 1983. If that rings a bell for us, it was an independent school. Yeah. So it was an independent school, and so it was built then, opened, and they celebrate the anniversary every September along with independence. There has not been major work since, and so the school, the staff at the school, and they've been interacting, and they've been identifying some challenges throughout this year that we have spoken about, and we promise that we will get it done. So to date, all of those things, the restrooms that were in place were actually just two stalls, not separate. It's one stall, with two toilets, and there wasn't a separate male and female section, so you always had to ensure a teacher was there. Boys didn't go in when the girls were there, and girls didn't go in when, and it was a very small space. So that has been extended. So you have a separate male and female restroom area, and then the staff restroom area was also expanded. So that has been happening, and the team is also working, and we noticed earlier this week that we would not make the September 2nd deadline, but we didn't want to delay the start of school for anyone. And so we contacted our colleagues at the Department of Community Development, Ministry of Health, Gender Affairs, Social Development, et al., and we were able to utilize the bottom floor of the Albertha Payne Community Center there at Bath Village. We've already moved in. We did the full deep cleaning, sanitization, everything to make sure it's set, and we did some fencing because the area wasn't fenced, and you don't want the students to, this is the first day, the preschoolers, the first couple of weeks, to have any challenges in the area of safety. So we did that minor fencing, temporary fencing, and the school is set up, completely set up. I was there this morning. I was there before 9 o'clock this morning, and the classroom areas were already set up, quite similar to the way it is at the Charleston preschool proper. So the teachers were very encouraged. They are just happy that they were able to see the start of the work, and they're looking forward to the end of that work. We anticipate that it will be finished by the end of September, so they should be back in their space by October. And then Charlestown Secondary, we had some challenges in the complex that houses the sixth form. So we removed the roof in that area, and we had some other the wall at the walls and gates around CSS. We also repaired some of those. We also had when you look up the top, the parapet wall at the top of the sixth form, there was some damage there due to expansion from the heat and the swelling of the steel, and so we had some breakage there, and that was also addressed. And then several of the classrooms at CSS were tiled and painted. They hadn't gotten that for quite a while, and it's a huge edifice, and unfortunately in lots of instances in our schools, especially at the higher levels, the students do a fair amount of damage to the establishment. It's very sad. But if you don't watch it, they damage it. They break the lights and the switches and everything, and so it's a constant round of trying to get those things fixed. Some of the other schools had challenges, and so we'll have to kind of wait until the next round, or try to see how much can be done during the school year to cause the least disruption possible. But those are some of the major work that has been done.
Okay. You did mention that the Charleston Pre should be finished by the end of September. What about St. James Primary? When do you think that may be completed?
St. James might be around the same timeline.
About the same time?
Yes. Okay.
Now, there are those, the critics, I call them, who will complain that the work should have been done prior to, but that will always come. Do you think we are starting too late to do the work in the schools, or we started on time but the work just running a little longer than thought?
Well, I would always say that it's always ideal to have it, as I said before, to have it completed by the start of school. Our goal should never be to, have to run into the school year, but we also know that circumstances may cause that to happen, and we are just trying our best to make sure that the students' educational opportunities are not delayed too significantly, or at least we could find an alternative. And just for reference, and that's a long time reference, so it's not that I'm making an excuse or saying that's what should obtain, but I was having some conversations, and I'm like, when I was in high school, almost around the clock, almost all year long, we had construction going for one thing or another. And as I said, the ideal is not to have it going on now, but we know that we don't live in an ideal world, and we want the students to be as comfortable as possible, as quickly as possible, and so we will try our best to make sure that the work gets done as quickly as possible with the least interruption to their day-to-day. If it means slowing it down so that there's not too much disruption during the teaching and learning process, then that's what it might mean, to work after hours or work around it as much as possible. But at St. James, we will have enough classroom spaces to get things up and running based on interactions and conversations with the persons, the team working. However, if anything were to change about that, we would make sure to update the parents, because if something happens and we have to slow it down or stop on the weekend in any inclement weather, which is reality, we will just have to have that conversation.
True. But you're satisfied that all classes will start on Monday?
Yes.
Which is very important. Now, in June of this year, as usual, there was the annual teachers training workshop. Could you give us an idea as to how that unfolded? For instance, how many persons participated, how many were successful, and which areas of teaching were you most focused on this time around?
All right, so the course this year hosted, I think it was 26 persons.
Yeah.
And usually we have a larger number, but I'm happy that it was a smaller number, because this year was also an interesting year. We didn't have a high attrition rate, so many teachers didn't leave this year. We did not have, we also had a large return rate from those who went to college, and we had a large graduating class going from those coming back from CFBC. So usually you would have 2 or 3 teachers coming back from CFBC. This year, 9 returned.
9.
And then we had some teachers coming back from university who finished their bachelor's degree. And so at the end of it all, we realized that we really only needed, from the course proper, maybe about 6. And so that's why I said I'm kind of happy that it wasn't a larger number, because and persons sometimes wonder, well, why wasn't I picked? But it's an in and out system. As much as we would love to take everybody, or we would love to take those who we know have great potential, we still have to make sure that we're not overstaffing.
True.
And we have to take a keen look at needs. So I guess that's a good time to segue into the question related to needs. We have a high need in science and math, but not just any science, the physical sciences. So physics is a huge area of interest and focus. It is very difficult to find a physics teacher. We actually had to interview overseas. We've actually had, for the last 2-3 years, had to do external calls for physics and chemistry and those physical sciences. We also have focused on English. English is becoming a problem, a challenge as well. English A and English B literature and English. And so we were trying to recruit persons, but seasoned persons or experienced persons or degreed persons, which is the other part, because you have to make sure that if they're teaching the advanced sections, that they have a minimum requirement, academic requirement to be able to do so. So we might not be able to pull everyone straight from high school to teach certain levels. We also are seeing somewhat of a drop in the social sciences. So we are actively recruiting for history, geography. Those are some of the areas that we are trying to recruit. And then the modern languages are starting to present a problem. And what we're seeing in the teacher shortages is a reflection of what we're seeing in the classrooms, where students are not choosing those subjects as much, and those who are choosing them for a particular purpose. So people who are doing physics, it's probably because they are physics and chemistry, it's probably because they want to become doctors or physics engineers, and so math or strong math students might want to become engineers or in some related field, and so you're not seeing those persons coming back into the teaching. And the same for languages. Our sixth form language classes are generally like 2 or 3.
Oh.
History 1 to 2.
Really?
Yes, and English same thing. Very, very low numbers for the enrollment at the advanced levels, and even once you get to 3rd, 4th form, you're realizing the decline. We're trying to motivate students to really enroll in them.
What would
but
cause something like that? Because history in my day in school was one of my favorite subjects.
And it was compulsory, and it still is. But even with it being compulsory, we have it compulsory within the teaching and learning process throughout, but many of them are not enrolling or registering for it for exams. I don't know, persons have attributed it to students' lack of interest in reading. You know, many young people don't like to read as much, and if you realize history, literature, English, they all are focused on reading.
Yes.
And so they've made that connection. We have a lot more interest in the business subjects, and so a lot of students are enrolling in the business subjects over those subjects or the sciences where we may have the need. We haven't really pinpointed or identified the why, but what we're trying to do is to see how many we can get enrolled, and we've done some tweaking of the course selections. So you know, when you have something against something else and it looks more attractive, we've done some tweaking to see if we can get renewed interest in some of these subject areas, but we're seeing I think the biggest numbers are still in the area of business.
Yeah, that's strange.
So you'll find, like, in a 6th form class, you can very well have a business class of 40, 50.
But
and
are you seeing
a
it?
science class of 2, 3.
Yeah, but are you seeing it coming out in the end?
Well, they're passing the business, they're passing the subjects. Well, even those who are doing the science, they're passing.
Going into business?
But they're not necessarily going into business. They're more going to work for someone's business, going into administrative work and that type of thing. We're also seeing a larger number in law, which is not necessarily a bad thing. We offer law at sixth form.
Yes.
But then to do law well, you need history, you need the critical thinking skills that come with English B and from English. So when they come back, and law is compulsory to complete some of the associate's degrees. So even if they're not interested in studying law, it would be law or English B, and most of them are not going to do English B. So we're seeing that coming out.
Oh boy. So how long did this, since the attendance was smaller this year, how long was the training session, and who were the facilitators?
The training session lasted the same 2 weeks. It didn't change. The time frame didn't change based on the number of persons in attendance. We had 2 weeks. The facilitators were, as per usual, persons from the Department of Education, so education officers and staff, instructional staff at the department, also teachers who are in the schools and probably have been contributing in some way over the time in relation to maybe demonstrated mastery or demonstrated that they have strength in particular areas. For example, for the special education session, we had a teacher from CBIS who came on. For your technology session, we had teachers who have strength in technology, and that was the thought process behind it. We also had the practical session, and they had to do a teaching practicum, and they were observed by senior teachers in the system who then gave them feedback on what they did, and then gave us feedback. And they had days of observation where they got to go to the school for the day and observe and take notes and have conversations and about how they would deal with certain things, and also had the chance to come back and discuss. So you had the field experiences, which were a combination of the practicum and the observations, and then you had the in-class sessions.
Okay.
And we didn't leave technology out, so they always have to do a team session on how to teach online, just in case.
Okay, great. Now, for this new school year, what sort of numbers are you expecting to see attending the secondary school levels for the first time?
So, I think on average we see somewhere between 180 and 200 students going in most cohorts every year at each level. So you see the same thing, because if that was your entry number at kindergarten, and you exit at grade 6, you'll see that same number going into high school. And so the conversation we had this afternoon, because we're tracking, we're making sure we have the classes are not too big. So we are seeing about 100 or so going into CSS. We're seeing about 80 going into GSS, and we're seeing about 10 or so going into NISS, so that's about 190.
190. Are you in a position to say how many students have left the school system for whatever reason?
Well, left in terms of
School
graduating,
leavers,
yeah. As I said, the number for graduation is just about the same as your intake year. So it's always somewhere between 180 and 200. If it goes a little over 200, you won't go past 210 every year. Intake and the exit year. So that's what we can anticipate for this year for the graduating students. In terms of persons who exit early, the dropout rate, we haven't seen any dropouts. We've had some challenges with some students who we are trying to work closer with to get them to the end, and what we've tried to do is to ensure that every student does at least one CXC subject before they graduate. Even those who may have academic challenges, we have tried over the last maybe 3-4 years to try to ensure that every student does at least one CXC student. And we're also trying to see how many of them we can get graduating from 5th form as opposed to 4th, because at the end, if we can get them to the point of having 1 or 2 subjects, that is a start.
Of course.
Our aim is to get everyone to do 5, but we're not there yet, so we're slowly working towards it.
Sounds good. So I wish they did that in my days. There were some bright guys in my days who was basically chased out of school for whatever reason. You know, I wish they had pushed them to do at least one, because they were so bright they could have do 5 and pass. Anyway, I am told that a few persons have been promoted to be principal, and you mentioned it earlier when you spoke of the convocation, while others were promoted to the position of deputy. Could you give us an idea as to which schools did this take place, and if possible, could you tell us the name of those persons who were promoted, so that our listening and viewing audience could be aware and congratulate them if necessary?
All right, that's fine. So we had a few of our stalwarts, I want to start there, in education who have retired. And I think we should start by congratulating them and thanking them for their years of service, their decades of service to education, to our country, and to shaping and molding the futures of so many students. And so we had Mrs. Janice Whitaker Richards, and she was the principal at the Ivor Walters Primary School. Prior to that, she was the principal at the St. James Primary School. She was at Ivor Walters for some, I think, 10 years or a little over. And so she has really given her all to education, and she often says to us that her birthday is October 5th, but it's also World Teachers Day, which means that she was born to be a teacher. And so Mrs. Richards has retired, and we want to thank her for her time, and she will be replaced by Miss Serena Brown as lead for the school, and Mrs. Yasira Morton will play the assigned role of deputy principal at that school. And so we want to congratulate them on accepting and for demonstrating their interest in leadership. Part of our process in every year is that we ask teachers at the end of each school year to indicate if they're interested in leadership.
Okay.
And so we use that as our starting point in selecting leaders. We also saw another stalwart in education, Mrs. Jennifer Liebert, and she was at the Cicely Brown Integrated School for several years, working tirelessly with her students, the students with special needs, and advocating for them, I think, like none other. She has really ensured that they're always present and respected in every space, and that they're included throughout the various activities that we've had within education and across the island. And so Mrs. Liebert was replaced by Miss Kristen Springett. Miss Springett returned from university 3 years ago or so, and she studied special education at university, and Miss Springett has been the deputy principal for the last 3 years. And then we had Miss Denicia Bryan, coming back in January. She also pursued a degree in education, and they're both trained graduate teachers. And she returned in January, and so she will take up the spot of deputy principal at CBIS. We also had just a few reassignments. So we had a switch with St. James Primary and VOJN. Deputy principals for both schools were switched, and so Miss Natalie Hicks is now at St. James Primary, and Miss Tricia Williams is at VOJN.
Okay, great. Let me say congratulations to them all, and I know teaching is a thing that you have to love.
Yes.
In order to do it, there must be a strong love. I understand as well that there has been some promotion up at your end.
Yes.
Could you speak to those as well?
Yes, so on our end, of course, you know that I vacated the seat of Principal Education Officer on December 1st, and Miss Londa Brown assumed the role of Principal Education Officer. Once again, someone with decades of experience in education and within the Department of Education, and she was the Deputy Principal Education Officer prior. And then Mr. Joan Williams assumed the role of Deputy Principal Education Officer, and Mr. Williams is no stranger to education. His last assignment prior to coming to the department was that of Principal of the Charlestown Secondary School, and he also served as the education officer responsible for curriculum and assessments and secondary schools prior to assuming the role of deputy principal education officer. You want me to go on into the other ministry
Feel free to do
upgrade?
that. Feel free
So
to
we
do that.
also saw Mr. Algin Newton was promoted to the post of deputy
Yes.
director in the Department of Sports, serving alongside Director Jamia Claxton.
Sounds good. What about the UE distant learning thing that used to be Marion Heights? Is it still there? And
Of
who is
course.
in charge of that?
Yes, so in fact, it's so interesting that you asked that because they actually had an orientation exercise this afternoon. So I was there speaking with them and the incoming students this afternoon. The UE, it's now called the UE Global Campus, so it went from distance ed to open campus to now global campus, and we have our distance learning coordinator in the person of Miss Danielle Wallace. Miss Wallace was previously the principal at the St. James Primary School,
Okay.
and she assumed that role last year, at the beginning of the school year. She succeeded Miss Isabel Byron. And Miss Byron was actually there this afternoon as well, and we had the representatives from the UE Global Campus St. Kitts and Nevis who came over from St. Kitts. So there was an orientation, full room, I think close to 20 students at bachelor's and master's degree levels who will be starting their program starting September, whether for the bachelor's degree or the master's degree. And so it's very active, it's very vibrant, and then outside of that, you know that UE, the Global Campus, also offers short courses. So each semester there are short courses, 6-week courses or 12-week courses or 10-week courses, and we also support registration for those as well.
There's a lot of moving parts happening under your watch, you know. How are you coping with that?
Well, you just have to go.
You just-
You figure it out, and
Okay.
one of I had a meeting this morning with some teachers, and a teacher asked me if I were to give any advice to a leader, what would that one thing that I would say be? And I said, have some grace for yourself. Give yourself some grace because you're going to make mistakes.
Yes, yes.
And while the world might not be forgiving, you have to understand that mistakes are part of the learning process.
Yeah,
So,
of course it is.
with all the moving parts, I have learned that I must give myself grace and I can't be too hard on myself, even when things don't go as I want it to go.
Well said, well said. Now, I want to move to, before we go to our break, I want to move to an area that I have spoken of for some time, even before you became the permanent secretary, and my good friend Scooby was there, your good friend as well. We speak of this topic a lot, and that is the zoning policy and the enforcement of it.
Okay.
Because, well, I understand now that the ministry is now trying to enforce it, you know, because the policy has been there for quite a while. But something I've been calling for is for that enforcement. And my reason for calling for that over the years is that so many persons living in a particular area and their children are going to school in a total different area. And I one area I think that is suffering from that really is the St. James primary school, because I know of quite a few who are going to other schools. So speak to us a little about that, the enforcement you're trying to do in terms of the zoning policy.
All right, so we know that within each parish there are designated school zones. Let's start with the primary schools. For the primary schools, we have the communities which feed into each school. We have tried our very best to make sure, and all parents have to complete an application form that has to pass through the department. Prior to my reassignment as permanent secretary, I looked at some years I've looked at all 200 application forms to try to make sure that they're going to the right spaces. We're trying to make sure that lots of things are in order, and so the department has been working on that. Miss Brown and her team have been working on that, and one of the things we look for is the child in the right zone. Of course, there's a process for an out-of-zone request, because we understand that in life things happen, and there are some circumstances under which you may need to have that, but it's not like a free-for-all. We have noticed that with that, though, some of the parents have a choice of whether they want to attend a public school, their child to attend a public school or private school, and some have taken the private school option instead of remaining in zone at their assigned public school, and we can't control that variable, but we're really encouraging the building of the schools within your area as well, and we've seen a more balanced, if you take a look at the enrollment, there is a more balanced enrollment across the system. If you try to do a comparison, because one of the indicators for enrollment is actually the health centers. So based on which children were going to toddlers clinic would tell you who would come to preschool, who would come to primary school. So that gives you an indication. And the rate, the enrollment at the health centers in the St. James Parish is still kind of low, and I think that might be one of the challenges as well, that maybe the birth rate there might not be as high, or the population, because you realize the concentration of the population is in Charlestown. Lots of the non-nationals, when they come, they settle in Charlestown, maybe St. John's, so St. Paul's, maybe St. John's, but most of them don't end up in St. James's and St. Thomas's to a lesser extent. What we've observed, because we're tracking this, we're paying close attention. We've actually observed a decline in St. George's. So JLPS has had a drastic decline because birth rate seems to be declining. I don't know. JLPS last year had 1 kindergarten.
One?
Yes.
Wow.
So we're seeing that St. Thomas's last year had 1, and so we're seeing that decline in the birth rate. Charlestown Primary no longer has 3 classes of any at any level at this stage. We try to keep the classrooms at 15 to 17. Really and truly, an ideal is max 25, but we try to keep them just a little over 15 to 17 to try to get that level of interaction that is needed. But we're not. Persons may try to make it seem as though there is some big difference, but really and truly across the island we're seeing a decline, and where you're seeing the quote-unquote larger populations is actually a reflection of the population of the parish.
Ooh.
And not that out of zone. So you have 1 or 2 who may be out of zone, but it's not significant. And those who are out with permission under extenuating circumstances. For example, if a teacher is at a particular school, we allow teachers to take their children with them as a courtesy to them, because teachers tend to be at school very late, and teachers' meetings and activities, and to have to run from one school to the next, it's a little bit difficult. So we allow for that, for instance.
What has the response been like, though, to the efforts you're making to ensure that zoning policy is adhered to?
Some parents don't particularly like it. They want their children to go back to where they went to school or where they grew up and things like that. But they also understand what we're doing, and that we're trying to keep the children within their communities. On the high school level, we're going to see many more instances of out of zone, though, and I'll explain why. Because people, let me tell you, Scarborough, people get a little antsy, especially during sports season, and they send a lot of accusations. They hurl accusations at us. You're allowing this because a child won a race and those points should have gone to another school, and that type of thing. At the high schools, we have allowed for the last 3 years persons who are in the Charlestown secondary school zone to go to GSS. GSS was grossly underpopulated, and we were trying to utilize the resources that we have at GSS. We have teachers there, we have classroom spaces, and you were realizing that we had to keep building additional classroom spaces at CSS. And GSS had, last year's GSS class was a class of 36. Wow. The entire graduating class was 36. Wow. And so we've allowed for the last 3 years persons to go that way, out of zone. We were not allowing we're not really allowing persons to go into Charlestown out of zone, because we have an issue there. But we're trying to populate Gingerland Secondary. So for the last 3 years, they went from 30-something to 80 in enrollment. So you see, that's a kind of fair number of out of zone, but it has helped us not to have 5 classes at CSS at each farm. Now you're control it down to 4. Okay. And so you don't have to worry now as much about building extra classrooms. That is it's not free for all either, because you have to weigh and see, the why and all of that, and we have to cut off at some point because we're not trying to overpopulate either school, but at least we've given some consideration to creating a more balanced secondary school.
I was listening to you just now with the efforts you're making to get more persons at the Gingerland High. Could a similar thing be done for St. James Primary?
Sure. I mean, I'm not sure. As I said, right now, it's not like we're overpopulated anywhere.
Yes, that's true.
And so it is kind of difficult to, well, if for example, when I started, a group in Charleston Primary, an incoming group would be 60. Now an incoming group of Charleston Primary is 30.
Wow.
So it's half.
There's none to send away.
If you see what I'm saying. So it's not like it's a significant number, or it's outside, it's causing us to have to hire extra teachers or any of that. But we always encourage, and anyone who applies for outer zone for St. James, VOJN, EPPS, we don't give any problems because those schools have the enrollment issue.
Understand. I made a suggestion a few years ago, and I think I made it to you the last time we were here as well, where if it is possible to get the non-nationals who are registering their children to put them in that direction of the St. James Primary School. I mean, some people think that it's unfair, but I was just looking at the fact
trying to build the
St. James Primary. Is that something that you are willing to take into consideration?
As I said, we are willing to encourage anyone to go to any of the schools. So the incoming, and as I said, the incoming groupings for the three smallest schools the grouping is low for all of them. And I don't know if it's a birth rate issue, but we're not seeing 10 at any of them as an incoming class, and that's a small group. If you're below 5, I think 2 of them are below 5, and all 3 are below 10.
That is a real cause for concern. I mean, what do you suggest we do?
Well, I can't say what we need to do because people will start saying, I need to start. This starts with me. But we do need to increase our birth rate. We need to have some more children and get the schools populated. We remain employed. We remain open, functional, and relevant based on children being born.
That's true. Folks, you're listening to Government at Work. My guest this evening is Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education, Mrs. Zahnela Claxton. We shall take a short break, and when we return, we shall continue with our discussions on education.
So right, St. Thomas is right, St. James is put together and build your land. Right, St. George's and St. Paul's together with St. John's. This land is enough for all to share. No reason to leave and go nowhere. Foreigners can come here from America and England. There is something mighty sweet about my land. And if the foreigners who live here can insist that it's here they're from, then I swear I'll never leave my native land. One people, one country.
Welcome back. Zahnela, last year there was quite a bit of chatter surrounding the new grooming policy, especially as it relates to the various haircuts, hairstyles. How is that working out thus far? It depends on who you ask. Because for those of us who are more traditional, we may say it has gone too far. For those of us who are more liberal, we may say it can go further. And so it depends on who you ask. The issue around grooming from some schools of thought is that the way we represent ourselves and we present ourselves is almost synonymous with the way we're going to focus or pay attention to our work and the seriousness with which we will do what is intended to be done at school, which is learn and get our assignments done and that type of thing. Persons feel that excessively long hair may be viewed as unkept. Those types of comments drive and sentiments drive the responses. So the changes included a lengthening of boys' hair and allowing girls to wear extensions and beads. And
it is something that we are continuously monitoring and continuously assessing, and of course seeking advice, because there are many layers to this. It's not as easy as making a decision, nor should it be based on our personal feelings as well, although those would always guide your moral standings, and all those things would guide your decisions. You still have to look at the other layers of it. So it depends on who you ask. We have seen some girls who have excessively long extensions, and that is not the intention. The intention was for how they refer to it. There's an expression that they use: protective hairstyles. They call protective hairstyles when you can do something to keep your natural hair, quote unquote, protected from breakage. And so those braids are part of the protective hairstyles cluster. The boys, I've seen some of them who have done a great job of, even though they're a little bit longer, keeping them well combed out. And then I've seen some of them who do their twist outs. And as I said, culturally we've changed. I went into a space the other day. I never thought I would see a gentleman with a twist out, and I saw a gentleman with a twist out in a different space. You're seeing persons within certain fraternities, your legal fraternity, having certain hairstyles. And so I know that persons say that your hairstyle doesn't define you, and that is somewhat true, or very true. However, there are still some who feel that along with the hairstyle shifts, you will see disciplinary shifts.
Okay. All right. What about the dress code? Is there any changes to that? Are you seeing any improvements in that area?
Dress code for students?
Yes.
So there are no changes to the dress code for students. They're supposed to wear their uniforms. They have certain color shoes and socks that they're supposed to wear. We are seeing this year there's going to be a change at the secondary schools. The secondary school PE uniforms, previously they had a white shirt. Both high schools had a white shirt and black pants as their PE uniform. From this year, both schools will have the school color shirts with some form of their mascot on them. So CSS will have their yellow shirts with the lions somewhere on there, and the CSS crest on there, and then GSS will have their crest and the panthers somewhere on it. So we're seeing that they're trying to embed the school pride within their PE uniform as well, and so that's a change that you will see. But the students are still expected to be uniformed even during their PE sessions.
Okay, great. Now, indisciplined behavior in the schools was identified by many as a major problem in some of the schools last year. How does the ministry intend to ensure that discipline is restored and that consequences be brought to be on those who fail to conduct themselves accordingly?
We're guided by the Education Act. The Education Act tells us what our parameters are based on the issue that arises. So, for instance, major acts of indiscipline, the consequence would be suspension, maximum of 2 weeks, just about 2 weeks from the school, and then the principal education officer can extend that suspension. And also, if there is a need for expulsion, we try our best to give opportunities for reintegration. We also have partnered with the Department of Social Services for several years to allow students to have some form of rehabilitation activity during the time when they're on suspension, and that has been an ongoing approach. For those who are not doing what they're supposed to, that would be our recourse. And each school has a behavior management system which is communicated to the parents, which includes maybe the first instance, or at some point you have a conversation, you talk to them to give them a chance to improve, and then it escalates up to suspension. We try not to start with suspension unless it's a major offense, fighting and those types of things. Our reality is in Scarborough, I think the last time we had the conversation I cited it, our reality is that sometimes we're managing students and managing spaces where you have other factors which affect student behavior.
True.
which includes students' exposure. One factor is students' exposure to illicit substances. And those are the things that we want to ensure that parents and the community are on board with us with. That if children are using any substance they should not be using, parents help us to help your children to understand not to take it, not
Sure.
to. You shouldn't be trying to snack on edibles during the day and then expect to have proper discipline, because those substances will affect your behavior.
Sure.
And when we come across them, there are consequences, because those are major offenses, having any form of illicit substance on campus or consuming it. And we have to deal with some of the consequences of those as well, because they alter children's behavior. And while people have their own views on these substances and whether or not children should use them, children should not be using these substances. Their brains are just still developing.
Sure.
Their body, they cannot handle it. And so though that, I think, is one of the major issues and challenges that we're facing, trying to manage student behavior. Also, that fact that parents are just more liberal. Households are more liberal. Children talk to their parents however they want to,
Yep,
and it's okay.
unfortunately.
And then when they come to school and you're trying to redirect that type of behavior, you get an explosion of emotion,
Yep.
because they are accustomed to doing what they want. And so the part that united under one umbrella theme that I spoke about earlier is also when it comes to behavior, that if we are not working in tandem, if we're not working together towards improving student behavior, and the parents are allowing these things to happen at home, the community is allowing, children don't even have to speak to adults, they don't even have to respect adults apparently in this community, and they answer you any old how. And those things were, and I don't want to be one of those people who, in the good old days, but yeah, in those days we
Couldn't do it.
you couldn't do it, and we need not throw the baby out with the bath water. We need to make sure that we are holding on to certain things which are the fabric of our society,
Yep.
which includes good manners
Of course.
and respect.
Of course.
And I think that's one of the issues that
Of course.
challenges that have
Let me ask you
compounded that.
something. When you have the parents-teachers meeting, do they bring out all of these issues and all of this response like from some of these parents? Because I understand what you're saying.
I haven't been to a PTA meeting in quite a while. The PTA meetings are run by
You're
the
too busy for
principals.
that, Zan.
Well, they're run by principals. If they need me to be present for a reason, for any particular reason, for example, if we're introducing new leadership, I would try to be there. But now we of course, we have education officers. We have the principal education officer and deputy principal education officer who will be running those things. But I know that every time there are homeroom meetings and PTA meetings, that those challenges which are being faced are brought to the fore. How do the parents respond? Most of them are generally quiet. You don't really get
That's
much
not
of
good
response
news, you know.
from them.
That's not
So.
good news. I mean, some of them are guilty.
or detached. But we're hoping maybe they don't know what to do either. Maybe they've come to the point where they don't know what to do.
They
but-
should ask for help, because I'm telling you, you are responsible as a parent to get these kids under control. And like you rightfully say, it's difficult to control them in the school if they have gone astray in the home.
Yes.
And so we need to get that under control. Now, Zahnela, we're seeing the education system evolving more and more, with technology playing a greater role in the education of our children. This has forced, of course, all, including the teachers, the parents, and the students themselves, to become more computer literate. Is this method more effective in the education of our children, or the old way where the teachers were in total command?
I think everything has its place.
I agree.
I think that it's the integration of technology, if done well, can be a great asset. I think there's also the possibility of overusing. And we can't just expect, for example, to fill the instructional time with YouTube videos. But the teacher should be more of a facilitator. And I know that our students become bored easily. Technology keeps them stimulated, but I don't believe that we should overstimulate them with technology. And so what we recommend is continuous transitions. So, but you have to have that instructional one-on-one time or engagement or instructional time to really work towards mastery. And so a combination, while I don't think that we should skew one way or the other totally, a combination and balance of both I think is the way. I know is the way to go, and the students need that. I realize their attention span is very short, and they come to us with a short attention span.
True.
The only time a child will focus for an entire day on one task is if it's on a tablet.
True.
And what has happened is that the images move so fast that their brains are now wired to respond really quickly. They have to, so because the cartoons, for example, are a series of pictures, it causes their brain to constantly fire. And so when they're not constantly moving and constantly doing something, they get bored. And so they're not focused and they don't retain. So we have to look at chunking a bit better to ensure that they get what we want from them while giving them what they need to succeed.
Understood. Now, speaking of computers, last year you were on the verge of placing more computers in the schools. Were you able to complete that initiative?
We were not able to complete it, and so we're going to continue this term. So probably by the next time we have a conversation, it will be complete. We will be giving the devices. There was a CDB grant which was issued. We worked on it during COVID to get devices into the hands of our teachers and our students, and so we are going to start off with that, distributing to teachers. We also had some other grants which provided devices as well, and so we will have technology areas within the school as well as the opportunity for students to utilize them at school and at home.
Okay. Now, are there any plans to perhaps introduce additional computers in all of the schools so that eventually all of the students and teachers could have access to a computer, especially in light of what you just mentioned earlier?
That's the exact plan. So that's the plan. Every teacher should have at least in the next year or two a device, a computer, and then every student should have access. Even if it's not individual devices per student, every student should be able to have access through centers or through catchment points where they can access and utilize those devices.
Okay, sounds good.
So sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I know the whole thing is evolving.
Really fast. Really fast.
Yes.
Actually, we're still catching up.
Yes. Zahnela, now that we are starting a new school year, I want to bring two matters to your attention. It's something that I would have spoken of before and I had to deal with myself when I was the CEO of the Nevis Cultural Developmental Foundation. And one is the Black History Month programs that is being held each year in the various schools. And secondly, the school's athletic sports meet that is also held this year. Now, my gripe is that there are enough days in the month for each school to have its own day, to have its Black History Month program or its school sports. But for some reason, we keep seeing two programs in the same day or two meets on the same day, and it's kind of denying the children from getting the full support that they would have gotten if they had their own particular day. Is there any reason why it can't be done this year, since we just at the start of the year and if we talk about next year?
Well, I don't know if you observed the calendar for the last 2 years for the sports meets, because what we've done is we've ensured that we have all of the dates prior to the start of the school year, and where we see clashes, we actually call them and say, hey, we have two meets here, let's spread it out. The only time you would see two meets happening on the same day might be in an instance, and it has to be really far apart, a preschool and maybe a primary school, and it has to be that maybe one is in one parish and very far. Not very far, because no place is really far in Nevis, but that you would see maybe one in Charlestown area and one in St. James's or in the St. James's parish. So you try to see in those instances, and there are no two preschools. We try not to have any two preschools at the same time, because the preschoolers go to each other's meets.
Exactly.
But so we've had that conversation. The challenge with, and we've tried to remind schools about the Black History Month Christmas concerts and all those activities. The challenge, which I know is a real challenge, is balancing the interruption time. So remember, in term 2 for Black History Month, you also are grappling with your sports season. Term 2, February, some schools have their sports day by February 25th. And so they're trying to balance instructional time, Black History Month concert, heats, and all of those activities and fit everything into one. So it's not the concert in isolation. And then they have to look at ensuring that they're working towards assessments. Then you're going to have the interprimary, which they would want to start to practice for. And so with all of those variables, we try to encourage them to at least stagger them morning, afternoon. And we are going to continue to do that. It is still not perfect, but we are paying paying close attention to it.
I hear you, but it's not only the students. Remember, it's the parents who want to go to this one and that one and that one, and the supporters, of course.
In the same vein, the parents have to be and I think about the employers. The parents in term 2 have to be at and love to be at all of the sporting activities.
Exactly.
They actually look forward to that. And so you're looking at the cross country relay. Some of them come to the heats. You have the sports day. If they have more than one children, they have all the different sports days, and then you have all the Black History Month concerts. It's almost like they need to take vacation in term 2. And so the employers are crying out as well. And so we are trying to manage that as well, because of the number of activities. And you have a parent out all morning or all day because one child is having cross country in the morning, another child at another school has it in the afternoon. And so those are some of the realities. It's not as easy as what we would think of as an ideal, where we can say, okay, we're going to put all those things in. Term 1, we're going to see football plus Christmas concert plus Independence concert plus, and most of all, we can't allow the students' academics to drop. So we have to help them to find the balance, and it's hard. It's really hard.
I hear you.
The community loves the hype things, and we have to make sure that we keep the students focused enough amidst it all.
Understood. Now, I understand that the exam results are in, but there seems to be some uncertainty around certain things. Could you enlighten us as to what's happening with that?
I can enlighten you as far as I have enlightenment. Of course, we know that exams were released on the 20th. Exam grades were released on the 20th. We saw quite a few ungraded results coming back, and so we're in conversation to find out exactly why. And when we find that out, I would be more than willing to share. We are aware that within our jurisdiction is St. Kitts and Nevis. Within our jurisdiction, we saw a lot of ungraded in all of the science subjects, and we saw ungraded in the TVET subjects. So your electricity, your building and furniture technology, and those subjects. And then, as I said, you saw it in your no physics grades came back, no chemistry grades came back, no biology grades came back. So you're seeing those two. That's what we've observed. We will be in conversation with our local registrar to see the source of that, and also what we can do, if anything, to ensure that it doesn't happen in the future. So that is as much as we have right now.
What would cause something like that, though, for them to?
Usually, when you see an ungraded, they would tell us there's a component missing. So, as I said, we're not sure what is showing up, and we're going to have the conversations and get information from our local registrar.
Any idea?
Located in St. Kitts.
Okay. Any idea when?
So I wouldn't know, because remember, the exam process is outside of our control as a ministry. We facilitate the process, facilitate registration, but the examination process is not within our direct remit. We get to celebrate with the students when they do well, but we don't get to control the entire process.
Understood. Now, a number of students, like you mentioned earlier, has graduated and will be looking towards the Ministry of Education and the Human Resource Department for scholarships to further their education, of course. What advice do you have for them, especially since you only have a limited amount of just a few? What advice do you have for those persons who are seeking to get scholarships to further their education? Well,
the Ministry of Education does not manage scholarships.
It's from the
human resources. What we can do for any student is to give them support and guidance if they need help with application processes. There is a form for financial assistance, which can also be obtained from the Human Resources Department, the NIA financial assistance, and then there are a few scholarships. So I can say to students, because we track every year as well and we keep up with it, Chevening Scholarship usually is open until November, and that's for master's degrees, 1-year program, the Chevening program. And then coming down to the end of the year, we'll see the release of the Taiwan ICDF, the 2 Taiwanese scholarships that would be given every February. You'll see the Cuban scholarship coming out, and for those who are open to areas of medicine, that's always a good one. Cuba also has a good PE program for those who are sports enthusiasts. We have Miss Alexandra Richards there right now, and she was just here for the summer. We also, the UVI gives two scholarships, 2 full scholarships every year. We just saw the presentation last week of the MUA NIA scholarship. Those are full scholarships. We want to let me take the opportunity to congratulate the 2 recipients. I know it's run under the Ministry of Health, but they are young people being educated and pursuing higher education. And so I want to say congratulations to Miss Kiane Body, who will be pursuing a veterinary degree. So when she's finished, she'll be a veterinarian, and she'll be Dr. Body in the next 5 years. And then Miss Derica Williams, who will be pursuing a degree in nutrition and dietetics, and that's another area that is a high needs area because of the non-communicable diseases and all of those things that affect us. So I want to say congratulations to them. But the MUA NIA scholarship is out every year. It's a full scholarship. You have to apply. That's one of the issues. Sometimes our young people don't apply, or they wait too late to apply. And so if I had to give advice, I would say get on it and apply to everything. Take your time, do your research, make sure that your application is impressive, and do some community service. In the good old days, going back to back then when we participated in a lot of community service, and that helped us to build ourselves, build our character, but also to build our resume and make us more attractive to scholarship boards. And that's something that's very much missing from their farms as well.
Well, what does one need to be able to be qualified for one of those scholarships?
Well, it depends on what the scholarship requires, but as I tell people, it's not all academics, it's balance. And I know of several scholarships where they expect to see some form of giving back to your community, of involvement, of leadership, and of course making sure that you're keeping your grades up. And so I would say to students, do your research, know what's out there, and when you know what's out there, you kind of align what you're doing to what you're going after.
Okay, great. Now, I wanted to touch base with regards to the Tibet program. I mean, there was a lot of talk about that a few years back, and the junior and secondary school Tibet classes are well on its way. Could you give us an update as to the kind of classes that are being offered and how things are unfolding generally thus far?
So at the junior and secondary school, we currently have some of the traditional Tibet classes. We have 2 non-traditional ones. So we have the building and furniture technology. We have electricity. We have cosmetology, which is a non-traditional one. They are working, and we just finished some assessor trainings in July, and we're working towards awarding CVQs to persons. And CVQ is like the technical type or arm of CXE. So instead of the academic written part, you have the technical part. So we're trying to award CVQs which assess the level at which you are in your technical field. So cosmetology, we are working towards introducing that this year for the first time. Building and furniture technology, we'll be doing CVQs for that as well through a project that we're working on, a TVET project that should be launched at the end of September with the Commonwealth Local Government Forum. And they have visual arts, which is painting, drawing, all of those arts. They have music, which is a TVET subject as well. And of course, our traditional food and nutrition and clothing and textiles are also available at Ginger and Secondary.
Sounds good. Now, very little is being said about the TVET Center for the Charleston Secondary School. Are you in a position to shed any light at all on that for us, as to where we are?
I'm not in a position to shed light on where we are. I can say that we're offering TVET subjects at Charleston Secondary now, and we, just before COVID, when I started in 2018, when I was reassigned to the the Ministry of Education, the Department of Education in 2018, the conversations were very hot about the center in Charlestown. Gingerland was on the way,
Yes.
and Charlestown was up next. Of course, you know that November 2018, 2019, and by 2020 we had COVID.
Yes.
And so I'm not sure where we are in the conversation, but we will have some persons on the ground in about a week or so from the CDB. And when they get here, we'll have the conversation with them. CDB funded the Gingerland,
Yes,
the project at Gingerland, and we'll have those conversations as well about that. But at CSS, we have several TVET subjects being offered, including they have some welding going on there. I love the work that Mr. Franklin and his team and his students do. They make little gates and they do that type of thing. Industrial technology farm. They have the electricity the same way. They don't have the cosmetology, but as I said, Gingerland doesn't have the welding. So they have a few that are offered at CSS that are not offered at Gingerland. But at the end of the day, the students are being exposed to a gamut of technology and TVET subjects.
Okay. Let me ask you this. One of the plans really was to have persons who have left school to go back and participate in the TVET classes. Has that started yet, or is just for now the students who are going to school?
So that was the plan, and that is the plan, and we just appointed an adult education. We're reinstating the adult education unit, and so we're going through the processes and having those conversations. So I think in short order, we should be able to do some short courses first, and then we also want the young adults to be able to do the CVQs, because CVQs are recognizable across the region, and so once you have a CVQ level 1 or level 2, you can apply to jobs in the region with it.
World, yes.
And we want to make sure that whatever we're offering to the adults, it has to be something at this stage in their lives. Yes, they want to get a skill, but they also want to be able to have some form of qualification that they can use in various jurisdictions.
True. Now, I couldn't let you go without speaking to you about athletics. This year we hosted a number of federal meets because the stadium is under repair. Are we hearing of anything that we are going to be hosting those meets again this year?
We haven't had those conversations yet. Of course, my colleagues at the SK Athletics, they're always open to conversations, and they know that we are open to conversations, and as much as we can help, we will help. They have had preliminary, they've sent me the dates, for example, for Inter-High and some of the main meets, so that we don't have any clashes on those calendars. But in terms of the plans for where each meet will be hosted, we haven't had those conversations as yet. We are open to facilitating anything that they're open to having here, and so we have proven that we can. We tried it last year with very short notice, and the team, I want to say kudos to the team again, because persons don't realize that we have a lot of the same persons pulling major things within on this island within one space. You have the same persons pulling the education hat, pulling the sports hat, pulling, and a lot of the persons really just helping to make that happen. And so I want to say commendations to them, but we're open to it. On the other end, if they're not hosted here, we want to make sure that our schools, our students can represent well, and so we are trying our best to also give opportunities for the schools to have practice sessions. For most part, we work with the schools to make sure the children get home safely when they want to use a track, or they want to have practice after school, that type of thing. And for our high schools especially, because we know they're working towards CARIFTA, they're working towards qualifying for different and making sure that scouts see them for the university level. So we're open.
Now, I know the Ministry of Education and Ministry of Sports work closely when it comes to.
We're the same ministry.
I'm going to.
We're the same.
Yes, that is true.
Yes.
I have the same minister. But I put to Jamie on several occasions the fact that there's a need for an athletic association here in Nevis. And since that education and sports work so closely, and they basically have all the coaches and things, that they should start looking seriously at I know normally you will want to have an annual general meeting, and from that come the association. But in a case like this, you need to start somewhere. And I was suggesting that you could start with the coaches that you have at present. And once they get it going, then they have the AGM, and then they could always elect who they want. But I think the Ministry of Education and Sports should really make that effort to form a athletic association. Your thoughts?
Well, I think that there's also always space for the discussion a lot, and I don't know if you have been keeping up with the Federal Athletics Association elections. They're going through their process of the AGM and the elections, and so on the ballot we are seeing several persons from Nevis. Should they want to continue that conversation, because clubs make up associations, and we have a fair number of clubs here on Nevis as well. Should they want to continue that conversation, Mr. Claxton is in conversation with them constantly and trying to gauge where their mind space is, what they would want to do, and we will be able to go forward from there. Do I have a particular preference? I prefer whatever is in the best interest of the sport and whatever is in the best interest of our athletes.
Yeah, that's very diplomatic, Zahnela. That is very diplomatic. You're not exposing yourself to it. Okay, that's all right. Well, Zanny, I want to thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us this evening. I know you're a very, very busy person and hard to get. I'm glad you were able to make it here this evening, and I want to thank you. I want to give you the last words to our listening and in public, and to say whatever you feel like telling them as your parting words.
Okay, so parting words, since it's so close to September 2nd, as I wrap up this evening, I want to wish all of our teachers, our students, and anyone associated with our schools, our support staff, the very best this year. We are at the beginning of an academic year, new academic year, but for many of us, we are still experienced at the process and the journey, and we want to make it one that is successful, where we can see the holistic development of our students. I want to encourage all affiliated with our school system as well, because I know that it doesn't come without its challenges. You have challenges at every end, at every level. You have your infrastructural challenges, you have the behavioral challenges that we talked about, and so we know that the year would not be without challenges. But one of the things that drove me as a teacher, and that still drives me even within the space that I'm in now, is the impact that we can have on students, and the holistic impact that we can guide them academically, that we can guide them through the sports process, and that we can guide them through life, and we can equip them with the skills needed to make it through life. And I want to encourage the parents to continue to support the teachers, support us fiercely in the academics, as we will see. Scarborough, we didn't get to talk about it yet, but we're going to talk about it later, because the first season is football season. So the fierce competition and the support that we have seen in the football, primary school football, that has been growing. We should see the start of October, the primary school football tournament, and it should go down until mid-November. And we know that the parents have really, and the community has really been rallying around the students, and so we want to see that fierce support also within the classrooms, within the schools. We want to ask you to support the teachers and to really set high standards for your children, and standards and boundaries for them to understand that respect is a must in your household and while at school, because that is how we're going to be collectively successful. I want to also wish all of our school leaders the very best. It is not easy to manage any plant, any institution, and it definitely is not easy to manage a school. And so I want to wish the school leaders the very best, and ask all of our staff members and parents again to support our school leaders and your entire school body during the upcoming academic year. Parents, make sure that your children are balancing, and so in everything that they're doing, that whether they're extracurricular all the academics, that they're not focused or skewed in one way or the other, so that they can be balanced. Because I say to persons all the time, if you want to, no matter how strong an athlete you are, for example, if you can't master your academics, it's hard for you to get an athletic scholarship.
Sure.
So I want to say that, and I want to also, as I just spoke to scholarships, say commendations to Miss Kalia Jones.
Mm-hmm.
She was able to earn a full scholarship to Monroe College, and she just finished 5th form. I think she's 16, and so congratulations, Kalia. Only the many great things to come, and we wish you the very best from within our ministry. And I think that even an ambassador such as Kalia would be a good example for us to follow. And also commending Troy Nisbet. We didn't get to talk about swimming, but to commend Troy Nisbet, who was able to compete on the Olympic stage.
Oh, yes. How could I forget that?
Yes, all of those things coming to the front. I want to say that excellence is within all of our students, and excellence is within our system, and we can tap into it. And this year, I hope that we'll be able to soar and really demonstrate that excellence.
I hope so too, Bob. Zahnela, one more thing. Remind the 6 farmers.
Yes, and I almost 6 farmers and parents who have 6 farmers within your household. Please save the date on Tuesday at 8:30 a.m. You're expected to be at the Malcolm Gishard Recreational Park. You will have the presentations and course offerings, and then right after that you will have advising. Some of our 6 farmers, the persons coming in, don't know what subjects they want to do or what combination of subjects they need to do to get an associate's degree. We will have teacher advisors on site to guide you through, talk to you through if you're not sure what path you want to go. So at the end of it, you can walk out with the best possible qualifications. And so to get your associate's degree, you might need to do this combination. They'll guide you through, and you can make an informed decision. And by the end of that process, you'll be ready to start your first day at 6th form. So please make sure that you are there, and make sure parents, I know it's been a lot of downtime for our students, so they will have to get up early and get out and get down to Malcolm Gishard Recreational Park.
And that's a good note to end on this evening. Folks, we have come to the end of another edition of our Government at Work program. Join us again next week when we shall do it all over again. Do enjoy the rest of the evening's programming. Then have a pleasant night's rest. Good night.